Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this call. This is one of the opportunities that COVID gives us to watch a market changing before our very eyes. Ed Sullivan from Ritchie Brothers is going to talk today about the used equipment market, and I think it's changing very rapidly. And in talking to Ed, it's kind of interesting. It's changing in a direction, and it may not come back. So I think this is a fascinating time to sort of watch this, listen to his projections, learn about the used equipment market, and then we'll be able to sit back and see what happens. I'm going to let Ed introduce himself so you kind of understand his background and walk us through the presentation. We have a smaller group on today, so we're going to leave open two options. Make it an open dialogue. If you have a question on a slide as you see it, unmute yourself and then ask Ed the question and then remute yourself. If you would rather, you can type in your questions in the chat box and Ashley will try to read those out as they come along. So with that, Ed, I'm going to let you take over.
Thank you, Ken. And first I want to thank HCCA and Ken and Ashley for giving me this opportunity today to present to the group. I'm excited to be here. My name's Ed Sullivan. I'm with Ritchie Brothers. I'm the territory sales manager for Northern Virginia and Southwest Maryland. I also cover a part of West Virginia as well. I'm going to be discussing today a dialogue on COVID-19 and the used equipment market. My goal was to help answer the question that I get most often, which is, what's going on with used equipment? What's happening out there? A lot of customers are asking with all the uncertainty that we're experiencing, and I'm hoping to give some clarity to that in an answer today. So the agenda is, I'm going to first start by introducing myself since I am new to the group and I'm new to this area. I'll take a brief minute to do that. Give a little background on Ritchie Brothers and the history of our company. That'll help for those of you that aren't familiar to give you some context and the size and scope of the company that we are. That'll help reinforce some of the data that we'll look at later when it comes to our auction trends. Next, we'll do a quick market conditions overview. We're all pretty familiar with what's going on out there, but I think it's important to contrast what we're seeing in the used equipment market with what's happening in the economy at large, because there are quite some differences. We'll then look at some case studies that will further reinforce the auction trends that we review and see how they translate to actual items selling here in this region. There'll be a question at this point in the presentation for those that are participating. There'll be 3 questions that will pop up on your screen. I'd ask or encourage you to please answer those. If you get the answers correct, there will be a prize afterwards that I'll follow up with you on. Lastly, I'll discuss auction demand and give you some idea of what we're seeing as far as current demand at our auctions. And then as Ken has mentioned, if there's questions that come up throughout this presentation, feel free to come off mic and ask away or put them in the chat feature and Ashley will go ahead and ask for the group. So really quick about me, again, Ed Sullivan. Some of you might find that name easy to remember. Some of you might not even know why I'm saying that. I'm from Pennsylvania. I grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs. I've relocated to Virginia for this position, and I currently live in Ashburn, which I love. I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County to study emergency health services and become a paramedic. I also spent some time in law enforcement while in college in Wildwood Crest, New Jersey during the summers, which was a fantastic experience. Once I graduated, I got into equipment financing for a company called Fleetway Capital. I spent about 9 years there as an account executive, working my way through underwriting, asset management, and that was really my introduction to Ritchie Brothers. As in the banking and finance world, Ritchie Brothers auction values are really the gold standard for what equipment's worth, and that's certainly important when lending money for that equipment. Being new to this area and new to this territory, I really wanted to dive in as much as possible and not only meet my customers one-on-one, but really understand what's going on in this region and in this territory in general. So these groups have been super helpful in doing that, especially HCCA with all this dialogue. It's given me a better understanding of what are the big projects, what are the politics of this region, and really what's going on. So that's been a great experience. I'm also taking a course with the Association of Equipment Management Professionals to get certified with their equipment management program. And the intentions behind that is so I can better understand the roles and responsibilities of an equipment manager and some of the challenges they face. So when I'm proposing my services, I can really take those factors into consideration and give the best proposal possible. Moving along to a little bit about Ritchie Brothers. Ritchie Brothers is the world's largest equipment auction company. We're based out of Canada. Under the Ritchie Brothers umbrella, we have several different platforms and services that we offer. Most notable is IRONPLANET. Many of you might be familiar with IRONPLANET, and it may have done business with them before we acquired them a few years ago. With IRONPLANET, we have GovPlanet, Cruise Energy, Salvage Sale, and Lake Auctions. They all serve different purposes. GovPlanet's like it sounds, government municipal sales. Cruise Energy is our oil and gas auctions, where we have large energy liquidations. And Lake Auctions is actually our high-end car, collector car, toy auctions that most people aren't too familiar with. So a lot of products, a lot of service offerings. Lastly, Ritchie Brothers Financial Services is the financial arm of our company, where we offer our buyers pre-approvals and financing to purchase equipment from our auctions, which really helps increase the buying power of our buyer base. So a lot going on. IRONPLANET is the future of our company. It's kind of the cutting edge and the leading edge of everything we're doing, being that we're becoming a more global economy every day, and the emphasis on technology and now social distancing is becoming more and more important. Real quick history, Ritchie Brothers started in the 50s with the three Ritchie brothers having a furniture store in Canada, and the bank had asked that they pay back their loan of $2,000. So the quickest and easiest way to do that was to have an auction and sell all the furniture. It was so successful that they continued to have more auctions and eventually found their way into equipment, heavy equipment, which would be their bread and butter. So they started in Canada, they worked their way into the US a little bit, having some auctions in Oregon, eventually had a couple auctions in the United Kingdom. They had some permanent locations in Canada. And then finally in 1998, the company went public on the New York Stock Exchange. This really changed the face of the company. They were able to go out and buy real estate, purchase properties to actually have physical site auctions permanently placed throughout North America and the rest of the world. By 2017, our company was already transacting billions of dollars a year in heavy equipment. That led to the acquisition of IRONPLANET in 2017, which, as I had mentioned, was a game changer for our company. And what I can say is IRONPLANET is really the bridge that has allowed us to succeed through this COVID challenge that we're facing. The technology and the tools that came along with that acquisition have really let us pivot quickly without any disruption really to our normal business operations. It's been fantastic. Many of you have been to Orlando sale, I'm sure. Those that have, I know it's quite memorable. It's overwhelming. It's incredible. It's really a sight to see. I haven't personally been, but I've heard enough to know that it's pretty spectacular. So in 2018, we sold about $276 million worth of equipment at just one sale at our Orlando site. This picture doesn't really do it justice. That includes about 13,000 pieces of equipment, 18,000 buyers from countries across the world. So just giving you, again, the size and scope of our capabilities as a company with just a single auction, grossing over 270 million. So next we're going to move into the current market conditions. We're all pretty familiar with these thanks to the news and everything going on around us, but I think it's important to take a look at what's happening in the economy overall, and then compare that to what we're seeing in our equipment market. So GDP's clearly crashed. Our gross domestic product, it's down 33% as of Q2, which is historic lows. I don't think we've seen that since the Great Recession or Great Depression. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of concern. I still think we're not sure what the long-term impacts of this are going to be. So there was a lot of real reservation initially. The unemployment rate really spiked right in the middle of this, or on the early onset, as one would expect, with governments shutting down their economies. Basically, we peaked at about 15%, which is close to the unemployment we saw during the housing crisis 2008. Fortunately, we're seeing people return to work as things open up. and policies begin to change, hopefully that'll trickle into our industry and help us find the help that we so desperately need. So there's a positive note. We'll see what this possible resurgence and the impact that may have, but things look pretty good as far as that goes. Crude oil prices have been on a slow decline, or a decline, I should say, over the past few years. We've seen it firsthand here at Ritchie Brothers with pretty large energy liquidation sales, even as of recently, before COVID. COVID's only accelerated the decline of the price of oil, which fortunately has lowered our fuel costs and for our fleets, but certainly has a larger impact to the overall economy at large. Looking at the total construction market forecast, things look pretty good. Based on what I see in this graph, there's relative stability moving into the next few years with slight increases. I think that's a pretty optimistic outlook, even though the total market's shrunk by about 70 billion. I think the uncertainty really lies here. Many of you, I sure would agree, with that non-residential part of our business and the future of commercial space and buildings. I know the Fitch ratings, which rates or projects housing starts and housing building product sales, they actually adjusted their forecasts significantly after a better than expected Q2. And those forecasts also look fairly stable and strong over the next year or two. So looking at this map is really showing us states' reactions to the coronavirus with regards to construction projects. As we can see, initially, states were reacting completely differently. I'm showing this because it's important to take into consideration that the local economies have all been impacted differently depending on their state's response to COVID. This was a study or a survey of about 350 equipment managers. They were asked, what were their expansion plans, their fleet expansion plans moving forward, given what's happening with COVID? And majority of them kind of said they were holding tight. They're not really doing much. And that's really what I've heard, mostly talking to many of my customers, and it's, somewhat expected. However, the ones that are selling that I had found were some of the larger customers that had acquired equipment over the years that was kind of obsolete, being underutilized or not utilized, or maybe even inoperable. I saw a lot of that equipment come to market early on so that they could take advantage of the strong used equipment market and really turn that into cash for their business as we approached that uncertainty at the time. Mid-year rental usage is pretty consistent year over year. Majority of them saying they're keeping the rental usage the same. The mid-year revenue report was way down. Most equipment managers reporting a decrease in revenue, whereas 34% were reporting about the same revenue, and there was no growth reported whatsoever. So we're going to take a deeper dive real quick into equipment trends. This data comes from our auctions. We publish every month equipment trends pamphlet that you can sign up for. Those of you that haven't, go ahead and put a chat in with your email address and contact information, and I can get you signed up. There's no cost for it, and I think it's a great tool to continue to stay abreast of what's going on. This here, to me, is one of the more important graphs. This is the used equipment price indices going back from 2007 through to 2020. If you look to the right side of the graph, you'll see the 2020 section, relative stability, and actually a slight increase, which to me is fantastic. When my customers ask me what's happening, that's really my response, is we're seeing stability and strength in the heavy used equipment market. And that we hope that upward trend continues. What's interesting is to compare this to that housing crisis that we saw in 08 and 09. You can see a pretty significant dip. Equipment prices dropped almost more than 20%. So we're seeing nothing like that. In fact, we're seeing relative stability there. So I was happy to report that to many of my sellers as they make their equipment plans moving in the next year. Vocational trucks will see a similar trend line. However, a steeper decline coming out of 2019 with a sharper increase here in the early 2020s. So I do wonder on this graph, though, Vocational trucks includes a lot of construction support vehicles like dump trucks, flatbeds, and boom trucks, but it also includes van and reefer trucks. And I wonder if the van and reefer section of this category is skewing the numbers slightly, as we know that they've been impacted differently. But again, all in all, things look pretty good here. You're really not going to take any type of negative hit to sell your equipment now if you have a need or plan to do so. Now we'll take a quick slice of equipment by type. I chose hydraulic excavators because that's one of our more popular equipment types that come to sale. On the left, you'll see the gross transactional value of hydraulic excavators. That's the amount of excavators in dollars running through our sales. You'll see consistency. Overall, we have the same volume in dollars running through our sales from the beginning of Q1 of 19 through Q3 of 2020. In fact, the volume's up slightly compared to the third quarter of last year. Below that are the number of lots sold of hydraulic excavators. This further supports what we're seeing in GTV. It's basically showing a steady supply of this type of used equipment coming to our auction. On the right, for my Caterpillar fans out there, Cat's the dominant leader in supplying used equipment, used hydraulic excavators in our auctions, with over 3,600 lots sold, compared to John Deere, the runner-up, at about 1,500. So that's a breakdown by number of lots by manufacturer. So that's just kind of interesting to see. We'll take a step back and look at IRONPLANET as a whole. So as I had mentioned earlier, we have Ritchie Brothers, which is our site auctions, where you bring equipment to our site locations and we sell it for you off of our property. IRONPLANET is where we come to you and sell the equipment off of your yard, essentially online. Since I've started with this company, I've watched IRONPLANET closely, pretty much week over week, as we have a sale every week. I did that because I find it important to really be knowledgeable and understand what's happening when I'm offering proposals and strategies for my customers. One of the benefits of doing this is I've been able to watch the trends myself week over week, and I've paid close attention, especially as COVID hit us. And what I've seen is normalcy. I've seen consistency in not only the amount of equipment sold, but number of lots, number of participation, number of international bidders. In fact, this August sale, which was the recent one I had at the time, hit almost $18 million in GTV sold, which is actually up compared to what I would normally see, which is around 10 to 12 million. So that's a positive sign. A lot of buyers, a lot of equipment on the market. Things are really healthy and strong there, and plenty of money coming in from outside the US, which we'll see how important that is in a future slide. So end user participation. This is probably one of my favorite slides. This shows the number of end users that are participating in our sales. This is significant because we all know those are the ones spending the most money for the equipment. They're the ones putting it to work. They're not reselling it for a profit. They're the ones that have the need and are purchasing it to use it. We're currently at 78% end user participation, which is fantastic. It's up 10% over last year. So again, this further supports those high used prices that we're seeing for our sellers. And we hope that trend continues. As you can see, it's on a pretty steady increase as well. So happy to report that as well. Quick overview of what we're seeing in auction trends is heavy equipment pricing is stable. Now is a good time to sell. If you have that in your plans, you can feel comfortable knowing that you're not going to take any type of negative hit in doing so. Recent IRONPLANET sales are exceeding expectations. We've got 8% international buyer base, actually 8% plus, I would say. End user participation is way up. We've got stability in the last few months. We've got increases happening. So all in all, a lot of good things to report on the equipment side. Is there uncertainty moving into next year? Absolutely. Will the market change? I can answer that question. So all I can do is tell you what's happening now. So some anecdotal words to what we're seeing from some of the manufacturers themselves. One of the CAT reps was saying that the OEMs are reporting increases in lead time for new equipment. This is due to the relatively recently lower demand than they typically have, as well as the price of oil and gas going down and the impacts on that industry. This is forcing more buyers into our late and low equipment, our low hours, newer model equipment, and really helping support the pricing for that equipment sector. So that's positive for us. This Volvo rep is saying that she also expects to see increases in demand for quality used equipment that can go right to work as they work through their supply chain issues as well. So here's some words to kind of reinforce, again, the data that we were looking at. Next, we're going to dive into some case studies. So these are some actual examples of equipment that's sold in this region. This first example is a package where the customer had come to me and said that he had finished a job and had equipment he wanted to sell. It was pretty easy to decide which platform we were going to use since he didn't really want to take it anywhere. Certainly didn't want to bring it to our yard in Northeast Maryland. Didn't want to bring it back to his yard, and liked the option of just selling it right where it sits. So we went with IRONPLANET. He then had three other choices or proposals, and that was to allow us to purchase it and then we resell it for him. Go with a guarantee where we can guarantee some kind of a net return from a sale, or to go straight commission and reap the benefits of using that platform as well. Fortunately, he took the straight commission and it sold for over our projection, and he was able to reap those benefits, and it was a good decision for him and for his business. So you can see that we had originally projected it to be $136,000. Now keep in mind, I price it, but also have support from analysts in our company. These analysts price millions of dollars of equipment, every month. So we tend to be pretty accurate. So for it to go over that market value that we expect means that there was strength that we couldn't account for, which is a good thing for sure. We'll look at why did this perform so well by looking at a few of the items in this package and seeing what happened there. I'm going to take a minute on this screen to kind of explain what we're seeing. This is what our buyers and sellers can see when interacting with our website and participating in our sales. It shows the equipment, it shows that it sold for $51,000, and it shows 31 bids, which is great. But what's the significance of the 31 bids? Who are they? Where did they come from? How do we get them? Why did this all happen the way it did? Well, I'll first start by saying this excavator is on a job site. We send our inspector out. So this is how it works. We send our inspector out to the equipment. He does photos, videos, oil samples, detailed inspection report, and then our company guarantees those inspections for the buyers. You'll see a little symbol on the bottom right of the screen. It says ironclad. That's our guarantee that what we report is what it is. And if that buyer gets there and anything's different than how we reported it, then our company has to make it right. And it does happen on occasion, and we make good for it. I'm explaining that because it's important when we look at the next slide, what the impact and the value of that feature in making this all work. One of the advantages of selling an IRONPLANET is that you're not having people coming to kick tires, you're not having to take phone calls, you're not having to schedule, you're wasting your time. These buyers are buying this equipment off of our listing and the data that we provide. But to do that, they have in what we're telling them. That's important because many of the buyers aren't even in this country. So they don't even have the luxury, if they wanted to come look at it. So they're spending their money overseas to buy this equipment and need to make sure it's exactly what they need it to be. This particular piece had 31 bids with 623 hits. We had participation from Australia, Vietnam, Mexico, Netherlands, China, and of course the US, various states. We projected 45,000 and it sold for 51. You can see below, we had a bidding war between Vietnam, a couple buyers there that really drove it up over that 45,000 mark. And we had some bidders here in the US as well, also participating. So pretty interesting, not something that's easy to get in a regional sale, which is why I'm such a big believer in IRONPLANET. Here's a second excavator that's sold. I'm showing this because, I want to highlight the fact that that first excavator wasn't an anomaly. This is something we see quite often, and this is why I felt so compelled to share it to the group. Keep in mind, a lot of what I'm showing you today isn't something you can see on the front end of this. This is all behind the scenes, and I think there's value in sharing it. So this similar story on this machine had slightly more hours, but it also ended up selling to Vietnam and is on its way there as we speak. The buyer is responsible for shipping and pickup completely. The seller has no responsibilities whatsoever. They simply have to release it, and we send them a check or a wire for what it's sold for. This is a second case study. This was a different part of a different package. This piece was originally in the weeds. It had a tree growing through it. It had grass on the roof. I mean, they'd been sitting for quite some time. Hadn't been serviced in a while, and the seller really had low expectations. We came out, we inspected it accurately, we listed it for sale. He did clean it up for us, of course, and it ended up for $32,000 with 203 bids. This particular piece ended up going to Texas. You'll see bidders from Indiana, North Carolina, and also outside the country. This is significant to also show that even pieces like this, typically we see a lot of people outside of this region buying, if not outside the country. So it's not uncommon for a majority of my equipment, which I track carefully, not even selling in this general vicinity or in this region itself. So again, the importance and impact of our reach. Here's a Daewoo that's sold. Sold for $43,500. This particular piece went to Egypt, but we had bidders from Florida, California, Georgia, Texas, New Jersey, a lot of port areas. So they might have been exporters as well, but we had PA, New York, Arizona. I mean, we had quite a few bidders from all over bidding on this piece for a total of 91 bids. Now moving along, I'm showing next a trench shield. And the reason I'm showing this is because a lot of customers don't realize that some of the smaller items do really well with us. I've had customers say, I don't want to give that to you. You guys don't want my piece of junk. I don't want to give you something that's rough. That's absolutely not true. In fact, a lot of the older obsolete equipment does very well with us. The reason being is the expectations and demand from other countries is completely different than here. Emission requirements are different. Regulations are different. In fact, they need equipment a lot of times that's simpler for their mechanics to repair, parts availability. So there's a lot that goes into why some of the older obsolete stuff does so well with us. This piece is simply a trench shield. It wasn't certified. It was super heavy. It was in bad condition. It was odd dimensions, and he just wanted it gone. So listed on IRONPLANET. It ended up selling to Canada. We had 40 plus bids on it. We had bidders from Texas and Mexico. And again, that buyer arranged shipping, arranged to get it loaded and send it on its way. So interesting story there. Just kind of highlight, again, some of the non-traditional pieces do well with us. Here's another piece, a backhoe, a loader backhoe. This item clearly was in a fire. Nothing but metal was left. Almost was heading to the scrapyard. We listed it on IRONPLANET. We had a buyer pay $4,600 for it from Honduras. So another piece that's on a cruise to its final destination. In addition to Honduras, we had Missouri, Kentucky, Texas, Florida, and New Jersey also bidding on it. So hopefully you'll see here a pop-up come on your screen shortly with a few questions. The questions are going to be in regards to the next slide. If you can, please answer the 3 questions. Again, if you get them right, you get a prize. And let's see how you do. So here's a 2006 Bobcat T300 skid steer, pretty common piece, 5,600 hours on it. Little overspray on the back, don't mind that. Seems to be in okay shape. What did this sell for? How many bids did it receive, and how many bidders bid on it? Go ahead and answer that question. You should see the pop-up now. the prize is really, really fantastic. So give it your all. Great. Ashley, I think we can move. Are we good?
We have 7 people voted. They're still coming in.
Okay.
10 people voted. We got 10 out of 13. I guess we have 1 on the phone, so that's probably not going to work. We'll give you guys 1 more minute to answer the poll.
Fantastic. Everybody wants to go on a cruise, right? Perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
Cruise tickets.
I'm going to give you guys 10 more seconds to answer the poll. All right. Do you want me to share the results, Ed?
Yeah, that'd be great.
There you go.
Oh, wow. Okay. We've got some pricing analysts in this group. That's good to see. Give me a run for my money when I'm pricing their equipment. So I like it. Cool. I think we'll be in for some surprises, but pretty interesting responses. Thanks for sharing that, Ashley. So the correct answer was 15,700. 15,700. So it looks like I think some of you were pretty close to that. However, it had 552 bids on this piece of equipment with 161 bidders from 4 different countries. So I'm showing this last example because this really pulls everything together. This is what Ritchie Brothers and Iron Planet's all about. This is the value we bring. This is what isn't easy for sometimes our sellers to see. So I wanted to show you literally behind the scenes what's going on. And again, I didn't cherry pick. I wouldn't do that. These are trends that I see quite often. And I wanted to share with the group, what's going on. So we're going to wrap up here on the last section, which is auction demand. This next slide it's actually from Q2. It says Q1 there, but basically we've got over 35 million visits to the website. 135 assets were sold at that time, and I'm sure it's a lot more as of now. We have $590 million in pre-approved funding for buyers. So that's money that they're ready to spend for your equipment. Over 2 million bids, over 1 million followers on Facebook. We got active bidders from 160 different countries, and $55 billion in approved online bidding limits. Moving along to our web demand. Our website activity is way up on Ritchie Brothers, primarily due to the fact that we've had to pivot to online-only auctions at Ritchie Brothers. So even though you can still come to our yard and inspect the equipment there, we do require the bidding to be done online for COVID reasons. We've had excellent success adopting people over. Even our longtime loyal customers have done an excellent job getting used to bidding online. And I think they're actually having some enjoyment with that. Whereas it used to take, a whole day of time to just go and bid on one item, they are now bidding from the luxury of their office or maybe their home office with a lot of ease. So I think they find it pretty convenient as well. So web visits are way up, account creations are way up. This would be expected. That it is maintaining its strengths. We've got over 11 million views as of June of 2020, or through June 2020. What's interesting here is the request for bidding privilege is up 41%. So we've got more people requesting to participate, not just visiting, which is also a good indicator. And lastly, our overall bid amount volume is up 37%. So strong demand, again, plenty of buyers ready to spend their money, and we just need more equipment to offer them. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. I hope that you'll be able to take some of this information and use it when you're making your fleet planning decisions and budgeting into the end of this year and next year. Hopefully this will give you a sense of what the equipment market looks like and what it's doing and kind of where it's heading. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I think that's a great place to stay connected with everybody. And if you have any interest in signing up for those monthly reports at no cost, again, drop me a line. So I'll wrap it up there and leave it open to questions if there are any. And again, I want to thank you for listening today.
So Ed, how about making a projection for what's going to happen with your live auctions in the future, given what's happening with Iron Planet?
Yeah, great question, Ken. So this is speculation, but this would be what I would think, and that is we're having such success with our online auctions and our virtual auctions, and the convenience is there, and the results are there, that I think we're going to continue to see that moving forward. There's a lot of advantages to our company as well to have hosting auctions with that format. So I think they're going to continue to look to ways to leverage online for the best results for our sellers. Do I think on-site auctions are going to go away completely? Absolutely not. It's a big part of what we do and a lot of what people look forward to. But they're already looking at ways to kind of combine the two. Here in the Northeast region, what we've done is instead of having 3 individual site locations, we have Connecticut, Pittsburgh, and Maryland. We used to have separate sales at each site. Now what we're doing, Ken, is we're combining them into one regional event and then selling them all virtually between the 3 events. So I think we'll continue to see that type of setup as we move forward. So.
Do we have any more questions for Ed?
Good morning, everybody. This is Osama. Ed, at some point here, you had mentioned that you can guarantee the price. Can you please explain more on this one?
Yep, sure. Thanks, Osama. Appreciate that. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a couple different structures to deals, and that's something that when we meet to discuss your needs and your expectations for when you have equipment to sell, that we can explore. One of those options is a guarantee. Guarantee is really unique in that, well, we can actually price your package and guarantee you a net return of a specific amount. What this helps it to do is take some perceived risk off the table. This is specifically used when banks and finance companies are involved, as they sometimes need that to allow us to sell some of the fleets. Sometimes owners want to have it if it's equipment they're a little more uncertain about, where the market isn't as clear. So yes, there's guarantee is an option, but it's on a as needed basis, and it's really part of the overall planning that we do when we had discussed the needs of the seller. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for me? I appreciate the questions you've asked so far. If not, then I'll pass it back to Ken and Ashley here.
Well, Ed, if there's no further questions, thank you for doing this. Just so everyone on the call knows, this is recorded. Ashley will load it up on the website. And if you want to see more presentations like this where we can touch different parts of the industry using the Zoom platform, maybe COVID has pushed us in a new direction to get an analysis like this out to the members that we wouldn't have done previously. So Ed, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining in, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ashley. Have a great day.